Ananda. Ananda was the Buddha's cousin. His name means rejoicing, and was chosen because he was born on the day the Buddha awoke to the unsurpassed enlightenment. Both his birth and the Buddha's realization were causes for rejoicing. Of all the great disciples, the Venerable Ananda was foremost in learning. He edited and compiled all the Buddha's sutras, and remembered clearly, without ever forgetting, all the Dharma the Buddha spoke. Ananda's memory was extremely accurate and his samadhi was firm. In fact, Ananda had 8 inconceivable states. 1. He never accepted special invitations. In the Shurangama Sutra we read that, because he accepted a special lunch invitation, Ananda became involved in an unfortunate encounter with Matangi's daughter. Matangi used a Brahma heaven mantra to lure Ananda into a house of prostitution. Then the Buddha spoke the Shurangama mantra and ordered Manjushri Bodhisattva to take the mantra to rescue him. Ananda never accepted another special invitation. They're too dangerous. For a member of the Sangha to go out alone to receive offerings from Dharma-protecting laymen is called accepting special invitation, and is against the Buddha's rules. If there are 10 bhikshus, but a layman favors only one with an invitation, he may not go, all 10 must go. The Venerable Ananda realized his mistake and never made it again. 2. He never wore the Buddha's old clothes. The bhikshus liked to wear the Buddha's old clothing. Some even fought over it, feeling that wearing the Buddha's clothes would increase their wisdom and wipe away their offenses. Actually, they were just greedy. Ananda never wore them. 3. He did not look at what he should not look at. What he was supposed to see, he looked at. What he was not supposed to see, he avoided. He did not look at what violated the code of morality, but looked only at what was in accord with it. 4. He did not give rise to defiled thoughts. The Venerable Ananda followed the Buddha to the heavens, to the palace of the Asuras, and to the palace of the dragons. He saw the heavenly women, the Asura women, and the dragon women, the most beautiful women in all of creation, but felt no sexual desire. 5. He knew which samadhi the Buddha had entered. The other bhikshus didn't know. 6. He knew the benefits received by the beings who were taught and transformed by the Buddha in samadhi. 7. He understood completely all the Dharma the Buddha spoke. 8. He never had to ask to have a Dharma repeated. He remembered it all, and never needed to hear one twice. No one but Ananda had these 8 inconceivable states. Concerning not accepting special invitations, Shramanaras cannot eat or drink when they please, but must eat with the assembly. Novices and bhikshus alike cannot live with the group, and yet eat separately. Even a cup of tea should be taken with the group without assuming a special style. If everyone doesn't receive an apple, an orange, or even a piece of candy, no single person is allowed to eat them on his own. Rahula, the Buddha's father, King Suddhodana, was afraid that his son the prince would leave the home life. When the prince was still quite young, his father told him to marry, and he wed Yasodhara. When he was 19, he left home and, so he was about to go, his wife told him she wanted a son. The prince thereupon pointed his finger at her, and she became pregnant. Then he left for the snow mountains to meditate for 6 years, and for 6 years Rahula, his son, lay in his mother's womb. Rahula means obstacle. He had plugged up a mousel for 6 days in a past life, and so received 6 years of retribution. Suffering in the womb. When he was finally born, he caused a lot of trouble for his mother. King Suddhodana and the whole family were upset. Well, I never, they said. Without a husband, she gives birth to a son. Yasodhara has obviously been running around. She must have a boyfriend. She's a bad woman, pronounced the entire clan. One servant spoke in her defense. You're wrong, she said. She is pure. She stays home all day long, and doesn't flirt with men. The child really is the prince's. No one believed the servant, and they wanted to kill Yasodhara, to beat her to death. Finally, they dug a pit, built a fire in it, and prepared to throw Yasodhara and her baby in. Yasodhara stepped forward and made a vow. Heaven spirits, earth spirits, bear witness. If the child belongs to the prince, my son and I will not be burned. If I did transgress, we both will burn. Then she jumped into the pit. What do you think happened? The pit turned into a pool of water, and a golden lotus grew out of it to catch them. Everyone then knew that the child was truly the son of the Buddha. When the Buddha returned to Tadhi Palace, Yasodhara took Rahula to meet him. If the child had been illegitimate, she certainly would have feared the Buddha. But she sent the child out to meet him, and the Buddha hugged the child. Rahula sought the true way and worked hard. Among the great disciples, he was foremost in secret practices. He worked everywhere, at all times, but no one knew he was working because he never advertised his cultivation. His work was so secret that he could enter samadhi any place at all, even on the toilet, and no one knew. Although Rahula was the Buddha's son, the Buddha doesn't have only one son. He has three kinds of sons. 1. True sons. One often reads in the sutras. Headed by the Dharma Prince Manjushri, the Buddha is the Dharma King, and the Bodhisattvas are the Buddha's genuine sons. 2. Initiate sons. These are the Arhats who, out of ignorance, hold to the principle of one-sided emptiness and have not attained the principle of the middle way. 3. Uninitiate sons. Common men who do not know how to cultivate are upside down, but they are still the Buddha's sons. For the Buddha is the great compassionate father of all living beings. The wonderful Dharma Lotus Blossom Sutra speaks of us as poor, lost sons. We should quickly return to our great compassionate father. We all have a share in the Buddha's family. Gavampati. This venerable one's very strange name means cow cud. Far in the distant past, he had insulted a bhikshu who couldn't eat hard things and had to slurp his food because his teeth were no good. "You eat like a cow," said Gavampati. The old bhikshu happened to be a Pratyeka Buddha, and because of Gavampati's careless slander, Gavampati was reborn for 500 lifetimes as a cow and got to know the real bitterness that it involved. Finally he met Shakyamuni Buddha, learned to cultivate, and attained arhatship. Although he had certified to the fruit, his habits from so many lives remained unchanged, and all day he snorted like a cow chewing its cud. Shakyamuni Buddha was afraid that someone might slander him and reap the same reward, and so he sent the venerable Gavampati to heaven to live. There he became the foremost of those who received the offerings of the gods. We should take care not to speak rashly or to scold others. If you berate others, others will berate you. Pindola Bharadvaja means unmoving sharp roots. To the present day he has not entered nirvana because he broke a rule. Although the Arhats around the Buddha had spiritual powers, they were not allowed to display them casually. Once an elder called Jyotika carved a bowl out of sandalwood, put it on top of a high pole, and said, "Whoever can use his spiritual powers to get the bowl down can have it." Pindola Bharadvaja couldn't resist the temptation, and used his powers to get the bowl down. "Since you're so greedy for sandalwood bowls that you display your spiritual powers," said the Buddha, "you will not be allowed to enter nirvana. Instead, you must stay here and be a field of blessedness for living beings." Pindola Bharadvaja is still in the world, but no one knows where. Whenever people make offerings to the triple jewel, however, he comes to receive them, acting as a field of blessedness for beings in the Dharma ending age. Kalodayin. Kalodayin means black light. His skin was black but his body glowed, and his eyes emitted light. One night as he was out Walking, a pregnant woman was so startled to see his two bright eyes and black-lit body that she had a miscarriage and died. Because of this, the Buddha set up a precept forbidding Shramanas to take walks at night. Black light served the Buddha as an attendant and a Dharma protector. He was the foremost teacher who taught and transformed the greatest number of people, creating over 1,000 certified sages. MahaKapphina. Maha means great, and Kapphina means constellation. His father and mother prayed to one of the 28 constellations in order to have their son. He was foremost in knowledge of astrology. Vakkula. Vakkula means good bearing. He was extremely handsome. In the past, during the time of Vipassayan Buddha, he made offerings of the Indian Haritaki fruit to a Pratyeka Buddha, a sage enlightened to conditions. Because of this he received the retribution of long life. In every life for 91 eons. Foremost of the disciples in age, he lived to be 160. In past lives, Vakkula kept the precept against killing so conscientiously that he never killed a single creature, not even grass or trees. Thus he obtained 5 kinds of death-free retribution. Vakkula was a strange child. He was not born crying like most children, but entered the world smiling. Not only was he smiling, he was sitting upright in full lotus. Seeing this, his mother exclaimed, "He's a monster," and threw him on the brazier to burn. After 3 or 4 hours, he hadn't burned. He just sat there in full lotus laughing. Fully convinced that he was a monster, she then tried to boil him. When she took the cover off the pot several hours later, he just smiled back at her. "Oh no," she cried, and threw him into the ocean. He did not drown, however, because a big fish swam up and swallowed him whole. Then a man netted the fist and cut it open. Vakkula stepped out, unharmed by the knife. So the fire didn't burn him, the water didn't boil him, the ocean didn't drown him, the fish didn't chomp him to death, and the fisherman's knife didn't cut him. Because he kept the precept against killing in every life, he obtained these 5 kinds of death-free retribution. Aniruddha. Aniruddha means not poor. Long ago, during the time of Pusya Buddha, a famine starved the people and reduced them to eating grass, roots, and leaves. It was the practice of a Pratyeka Buddha who lived at that time to go out begging only once every 2 weeks. If he received no offerings, he simply didn't eat. One day he went down the mountain to beg and, having received no offerings, was returning with his empty bowl, when he was seen by a poor farmer, Aniruddha. The poor farmer addressed the Pratyeka Buddha most respectfully. "Holy Master," he said, "you received no offerings. Won't you please accept my lunch? As I am very poor, I can only offer you this cheap grade of rice, but if you want it, you can have it." Seeing his sincerity, the Pratyeka Buddha accepted. After eating, he ascended into empty space, manifested the 18 miraculous changes, and left. Just then the poor farmer saw a rabbit running towards him. The rabbit jumped up on his back, and no matter how the farmer tried to knock, brush, or shake it off, it wouldn't budge. All alone in the field and terrified, he ran home. When he got there, the rabbit had turned into a gold statue. He asked his wife to knock the rabbit off, but she couldn't move it either. When they broke a gold leg off the rabbit, another would grow back in its place. In this way, the gold statue was never exhausted, and for 91 kalpas, Aniruddha was not poor. During the time of Shakyamuni Buddha, he was the son of the Buddha's father's brother, the Red Rice King. He was the Buddha's first cousin. Although he wasn't poor, Aniruddha liked to sleep when the Buddha lectured on the sutras. One day the Buddha scolded him. Hey, how can you sleep, like an oyster or a clam? Sleep for 1,000 years, but you'll never hear the Buddha's name." Hearing this, Aniruddha became extremely vigorous and didn't sleep for 7 days. As a consequence, he went blind. The Buddha took pity on him and taught him how to cultivate the Vajra illuminating bright samadhi. He immediately obtained the penetration of the heavenly eye. He could see the great trichiliocosm as clearly as seeing an apple held in his hand, and was foremost of the disciples in possessing the heavenly eye.